Is Mark left? Okay. So, as I drew a still fresher soil about the rows with my hoe, I disturbed the ashes of unchronicled nations who in primeval years live under these heavens, and under their small implements of war and hunting were brought to the light of this modern day. So basically, this kind of goes over the fact that history defines how people like shape the earth over time. Because it basically says like primeval years live under these heavens. So you can always kind of see, you can go back and look at everything. Like everything's kind of connected in a sense. And his love of nature like drives his interconnectedness because he's like nature's so interconnected and intricate and complex, and you can like look through the soil, look through the like nature, and see the history. Like you can see the past and present, and like that's why he really loves nature because of this whole interconnectedness. And like if you can think about it, the Native Americans sort of shaped the earth. Like you can go back and look around and see like all these little like. If you don't look very hard, yeah, you won't see anything. But you can always see little things that, like, for example, like the Native Americans did. They, like, made marks on trees. You can always go back and see how they, like, made their marks, sort of.
And even today, like, there's Cherokee County near us. Like, there's different influences throughout, like, time now that has come through based on, like, interconnectedness from the past.
And earlier in this chapter, actually, Thoreau was talking about how he like just saw a bunch of arrowheads that he collected throughout the time. I think he collected like 900 in total by the end of his life, and he just thought how much he felt connected towards them.
Yeah.
That was actually going to be the question I was going to ask you.
Oh.
So very good, you got it. He finds arrowheads in the soil, which is then what leads to this quote.
Okay. So this one says, if the seed is not lost as sincerity, truth, simplicity, faith, innocence, and the like, and see if they will not grow in the soil, even with less toil and manurance, and sustain me, for surely it has not been exhausted for these crops. And so basically, Thoreau has pure intentions as he's working, and he does it for the satisfaction of the work rather than the material goods. And he lives in a simple lifestyle, and he relies on himself, which pertains to the simplistic and self-reliant themes in this. And so basically, like, he says that if someone does something with, like, impure intentions, the deed is essentially worthless because in the end, it really means nothing to them, and that they're not getting any real satisfaction from anything. But when it says, like, it's gonna sustain him, even if, like, the soil, like, even if it's less, it still sustains him because he has gone through that hard work, and he gets the feeling of he's really fulfilled.
So this quote is that the seeds which I planted, if indeed they were the seeds of those virtues, were worm-eaten or had lost their vitality and so did not come up. So basically this means that as long as like your traits are like true in a way, like not like jealous or anything, if you're like sincere, you're full of truth, you're simplistic, you have faith, and you're innocent, you're like bound to grow up in a good way. And if you don't have any of those traits, might not end up that way.
The beans are often used as like a metaphor for like how you are. Why concern ourselves so much about our beans for seed and not be concerned at all about the new generation of men? Okay, so Thoreau generally is kind of genuinely is kind of concerned about the future of society, and he just wants them to live sort of like the way he lives. He doesn't want people to necessarily like grow up wronged and like live a wrongful lifestyle. He wants people, he like wants society to like improve, and like through like all of these like things that he's talked about, simplicity, self-reliance, people can live like a less structured lifestyle, focus on like all the social constructs of stuff. People can live a less structured lifestyle and focus on like philosophical values, like explained in some of the past quotes, rather than material goods.
So this one is actually about, you can interpret it in the sense of like parenting. Like this is sort of his quote about how to raise children. So do you guys want to take a stab at like kind of what he's saying about parenting and what parents tend to focus on when really they should focus on something else?
Okay. So basically, sometimes parents, like there's different types of parents. You can have like a strict parent and you can have like a less strict parent. And so you can also have parents who like pay attention to their kids and develop their morals and make sure they grow up to be a good person. And then there's also parents who are like less involved in their life and like don't pay as much attention to like how they're growing up and their morals and how they're going to be, and it actually really has an impact on how they become as adults and can change how they benefit to society in the future, which can cause a recurring cycle.
Okay, so and I'm going to push you because you're right. You're almost there. So no parent grows up and they're like, yeah, I'm going to be a bad parent. Like I'm not going to raise my kids. What parents do though is instead of focusing on developing strong moral character and teaching their kids values and stuff like that, what do parents tend to focus on doing because they think that's going to make their children better rather than the former? And you have it in there.
They focus on the material goods, like rewarding them too
Like
much.
what?
The material goods that they get.
What do parents do that?
Like spoiling them?
Yeah.
Like,
So
and doing things for them?
doing what? What do parents do that gives them the ability to purchase material goods?
Giving them money and like
Where do they get money?
allowance, maybe? I don't know.
No. Where do parents get money?
From their jobs.
From working. Okay,
Yes.
Thoreau's talking about how back in his day, people would work so much that they would neglect to raise their children because in a parent's mind, well, as long as I have like a really nice allowance or like make a lot of money, my children will raise themselves. That's where he talks about that beans for seeds, sort of like the fruits of their labor. Okay, this value of like, I'm going to make as much money as I can in my job, you know, disregarding the fact that I never saw my kid play t-ball or I never got to spend weekends with my kids because I was always working or always traveling. He's saying that that is less important than just simply being there for your kids and raising a new generation of men, instilling, like you guys pointed out, those values, of those philosophical values and moral values. That makes a stronger generation than raising kids to have this sort of like lavish upbringing. So, good.
Wait, did I already go for this line?
I noticed.
Oh.
So this one is, we should never stand upon ceremony with sincerity. We should never cheat and insult and banish one another with our meanness. If there were present the kernel of worth and friendliness, we should not mean thus in haste. So basically, what he's saying is that if given the opportunity, just be nice, be honest, and be kind to someone. Don't like. So for the sincerity with ceremony with sincerity, he's talking about how don't like make a show of things. Be actually like genuine about how you feel to people.
Okay. And so this quote says, "When we knew not what ailed us, to recognize any generosity in man or nature, to share any unmixed and heroic joy." So the key idea in this quote is optimism. And so basically this quote is saying that we can recognize generosity from nature especially, but like also in some cases from man. And basically this creates like an interconnectedness with other people, and eventually if everyone like lives a good, pure lifestyle, everyone can be kind to each other and benefit from each other and create a good, pure, wholehearted society, because the main idea of transcendentalism is that they reject the impure societies. So they're kind of saying that if we all live by these ideals, then we'll have almost like a better society where everyone's benefiting from each other, and that especially like can be fulfilled through like self-reflection, which can lead to like a more purposeful life, because when you understand yourself, you can understand other people and how to be generous.
So the true husbandman will cease from anxiety, as the squirrels manifest no concern whether the woods will bear chestnuts this year or not, and finish his labor with every day, relinquishing all claims to the produce of his fields, and sacrificing in his mind not only his first but his last fruits also. So this one's just saying that in order to be self-reliant, you need not worry about the future. He wants you to live in the moment now and not worry what you did already or what you're going to do now. Just be who you are and be who you are with people that you love.
So this quote is again one that I've used in the past. How could this? So it's all about you're absolutely right. It's this idea about worrying about the future. Put this quote in the context of you guys.
So generally, we worry about like the grades that we get in the future, that the test that we just took now, or the test that we took a little while ago. We worry about like how we're gonna like do well, and then we miss out on like the opportunities like the games that Yura was talking about. How you generally like want us to live our lives, and you're just like you don't care if there's miss it like a homework every once in a while because you want us to live our lives.
Well, and think about too, like the idea of, you want good grades now because what?
Because you want to you want to go to college, you want to get a good job, you want to have a good future.
Right.
And so you want to like set those, you basically want to like set those ideas in place now so that you'll be ready for the future.
Right, and it's this idea, and you'll see it next year, especially when you guys take ACT and SAT. If you get a great score on the SAT, if you get great grades in college, does that guarantee your admission into Georgia Tech or UGA? Of course not. There's a million other factors that are well beyond your control. Like, it may be that the applicant reviewer was having a bad morning and they just didn't look at yours. You know how long they spend looking at college applications? I just read this the other day. 7 minutes per person. They look at your application for 7 minutes and determine whether you can go to the school or not. So, just thought that was interesting. But yeah, it's this idea that, you can't worry about, in this context, if your crops are going to yield the same amount that they were last year, because that is beyond your realm of control. Much like the grades and acceptance into college, you have control over your grades. You really don't have acceptance into if you get into a college or not. It's a lot beyond. So, good.
Okay, and so now we're moving on to the village, and so basically a quick summary is about how once he finishes his chores like around noonish, he a couple times a week likes to walk into the town, and as he walks through, he listens to the gossip that spreads from mouth to mouth and newspaper to newspaper, and basically he also comes across many stores that are trying to seduce and tempt him into buying their material goods, but he really doesn't feel tempted by them, and he realizes that he finds more comfort in being among his beans and in nature, and then also he finds that his lifestyle is much simpler than those in the village, and that as a result he lives a life without crime, greed, or vanity, and then he's also arrested and detained and held for a day in one of his trips home from Concord for refusing to pay his taxes, but however afterwards he really kind of unbothered about the situation. And another thing I wanted to add that we'll go back into later on one of the quotes is that one day I'll go over the picture. The bottom picture is, I put it there because he has a realization as he's walking home at night one night, where he's he eventually has learned his way through the woods, but he knows that many other people would get lost, and he says that it's really okay to be lost, and he thinks it's a good thing, which we'll get into for a quote later. And then the one on the top is basically gossip, which represents the villagers and how they would gossip around the town, and it represents something that doesn't really matter, and it's not gonna be important in a week, a month, a year. No one's gonna remember any of the gossip of what Annalise did last week. I don't know, but yeah, those are the pictures.
And some of the main points in this is just he kind of talks about how glad he is that he's kind of living alone and that he's just being a minimalist, and he finds that it adds to his well-being, just the simplicity that he adds to his life.
So every day or two, I stroll into the village to hear some gossip, which is incessantly going on there, circulating from mouth to mouth or from newspaper to newspaper, in which, when taken in homeopathic doses, disperses refreshing in its way as the rustle of leaves and the peeping of frogs. So first, to kind of understand this quote, you probably don't know what the word homeopathic means. Homeopathic it refers to a sort of kind of medicine. Homeopathic medicine is basically when you have too much of something, it's harmful. But if you had just enough, it can be beneficial. You don't want to have this adds a contrast to his previous thoughts regarding human societies, because sometimes he was it's all bad, all of it's bad, it's bad, yeah. And he kind of this chapter kind of says there are some good points of it, when taken with in short doses and stuff. And gossip and human interaction are really important when taken in like small amounts and stuff. Like too much interaction can be harmful, while solitude isn't a perfect philosophical value. Like it's important to like reflect on yourself, but you also need to sometimes, like he does come into the village, he does hear some of this gossip, because it's just important. And like a real world example is consider the effects of having like too many vitamins. Too much is harmful, while just a little is beneficial.
Okay, so this next quote says, "Not until we are lost, in other words, not till we have lost the world, do we begin to find ourselves and realize where we are and the infinite extent of our relations." So basically, there's like context to this one, and then like kind of like a deeper analysis, I would say. But basically, the context of this quote I was explaining earlier was when he was walking home from the village one night, and he was like, he knew his way around the woods by now, but he knew that other people wouldn't know their way around the woods and that they would be lost. But he thinks that it's okay to be lost because in order to truly find yourself and find like who you are, you need to be lost first. And so this can also be analyzed deeper by saying that like when you are like stripped to the core, when you're living completely simply, you'll not be like have all these distractions, and you'll have self-reflectance to finally like see who you are. And so this would be like taking away technology for a day, and most people, some people might realize that they're actually like really boring and wouldn't know what to do with themselves without it, but some people might find out that they like to do different hobbies. Like in quarantine, whenever I wanted to get off my phone, like I would pick up new hobbies like painting, even though I wasn't that good at it. And then spending time with people they care about, they can kind of see who they have strong relationships with once they put down their phone. So that's a good like today connection.
So in one direction from my house, there was a colony of muskrats in the river meadows. Under the grove of elms and button woods in the other horizon was a village of busy men, as curious to me as if they had been prairie dogs, each sitting at the mouth of its burrow or running over to the neighbors to gossip. So basically he was saying how he kind of despised gossip in a way, and how different he was from the village in the sense that he does that, because he tended to stay away from like the people who did that in everyday life.
Yeah, he kind of basically, so he compares these people to like the muskrats and like the prairie dogs, how they're just like sitting there, like watching him, like what is he doing? Why is he not acting like we are? Like why is he kind of just doing something different? So they're conforming to basically what like is kind of expected of them. They're like talking about it. They're like, why is he doing this? Why is he like living the way he is? And like people tend to like conform to this way of life. And like when you see prairie dogs, they kind of all look the same. They like all act the same. They're kind of just like look around. They don't do much. They don't add much like the benefit to society.
Okay, so is this yours or mine? Wait, is this
It's all
okay? This is
I
mine.
kind of just went.
Okay. So some have such a vast appetite for the former commodity that is the news, and such sound digestive organs that they can sit forever in public avenues without stirring, and let it simmer and whisper through them like the Estian winds, or as inhaling, either producing numbness and sensibility of pain. Otherwise, it would often be painful to bear without affecting the consciousness. Okay. Well, do you want to
Yeah,
this one? Because
yeah.
I
Yeah, you
like the
can.
next one.
Yeah,
Sorry.
people who get
Sorry.
swept up into like the meaningless events of the present. Like basically like gossip. They're like kind of what Lindsay said, like in a little bit of like the summary. Basically people are like, it's not gonna matter what's gonna happen, like the gossip you're talking about now, it's not gonna matter like a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. It does not matter like at all. Like people can get swept up in like the meaningless like events in the present and stuff. Like they're kind of just like numb to everything, and like listening to music and like distracting yourself from doing assignments, like you're kind of just, you're not really like focusing on your task, you're kind of focusing on the music. Like they're not really focusing on like what they should be doing. They're like they just gossip around and don't exactly like they don't really create their own stories. They kind of just talk about other people. They don't really have like a fulfilling life. They kind of just talk about stuff.
Okay, so on this one there's two quotes, so I'm starting with the left one. For the most part, I escaped wonderfully from these dangers, either by proceeding at once boldly, without deliberation, to the goal, as is recommended by those who run the gauntlet. And so basically, the main key idea in this one is like living simply, because he sees temptation as a danger, and he sees living simply by his morals as kind of like an escape to the temptation. So like, for example, when he goes into the village, the couple times a week he does, he sees many stores who are trying to like tempt him into buying his material goods and his things, and he kind of sees it as a danger because that would mean him breaking his morals. So he uses his morals to kind of keep him away from that, and he honestly is like so into his morals that he doesn't even find it as much of a temptation, but he does see like material goods as almost like a danger to his like purity. So he lives simply as a way to like release attachment from material goods.
So I frequently had to look up at the opening between the trees above the path in order to learn my route, and where there was a cart path to feel with my feet the faint track which I had worn, or steer by the known relation of particular trees. This was on page 93 of my book. So basically, this is referring to nature, of course. I mean, you can kind of tell by the trees. And what he does is like, it kind of goes hand in hand with like the lost one. When he's kind of walking through, his like feet make indentions in the like path, so he can kind of find his way when he like doesn't know where to go. Like if it's completely dark, he can find where his like feet went and like where the path is like worn down. So to kind of put it in perspective, like if you think about like a sidewalk or even just this tile, you can't tell where you've walked. You can't tell where you've been. You can kind of just walk by, and like when you're like in the darkness, like you have no clue where you were. But like nature will guide you along your path if you like follow the actual path. Like if you trust nature, nature will guide you, which kind of goes hand in hand with like the alchemist. The universe will conspire to help you in your journey, because like nature is gonna help you like get home. It's gonna help you get home safe, and the universe will help you in your journey, which is like a key point in the alchemist.
Okay. In our most trivial walks, we are constantly through, though unconsciously, steering like pilots by certain well-known beacons and headlands. And if we go beyond our usual course, we will carry in our mind the bearing of some neighboring cape. So it is easier to run away from problems, but we are more capable of fixing them with our knowledge, preconceived knowledge, thereby that.
So yeah, nature in the world's kind of vast and uncertain, and it's like talking to people. Like it's comparing people to pilots. Pilots don't fly where they want to. They fly where they feel like they know. They fly areas that they know well. So like they fly by certain well-known beacons and headlands, places they know well. They kind of take they don't exactly step out of their comfort zone. And people are like have to consider like the knowledge that they have gained, like all the knowledge that they've learned throughout their like life. They have to, when you're going through life, you have to use all of that knowledge. Because you have to use in your mind, you have to carry in your mind the bearings of neighboring cape. And it's easy to run into problems, but we are more than capable of fixing them using the knowledge we have gained along our journey.
Okay, so for this one it says, I'm convinced that if all men were to live as simply as I then did, thieving and robbery would be unknown. And so basically, he's talking about the theme of simplicity in this, because Thoreau truly believes that if everyone had taken on the transcendentalist lifestyle and lived as simply and minimalistic as him, that people would stop robbing and thieving, because if you don't have much, then people won't really have anything to take. And so this also kind of ties into The Alchemist somewhat, because they talk about how like if people think you don't have anything, they're not going to try to take anything from you. So like when they said that if you say you have all this gold, they're obviously not going to believe you. So they're just going to leave you alone because they don't think you have anything. They're not going to take anything.
And this kind of just shows a barren bedroom. Like if you were a thief, if you were like trying to take something, would you really take anything from that bedroom? There's really nothing for you to take. There's nothing of value.
Well, the other thing too is, do you guys remember when you did that ecological footprint? Okay, we found out that like not everybody lives the same lifestyle that we do, which is why the Earth has this sort of like massive inequity issue. He's kind of getting at this idea that like if we consumed less, we being like, upper echelon, upper middle class, if we consumed less, then there would be more resources for others, and then things would be a little bit more on an even playing field, which would then cause less thievery and robbing, because people would have basically the same room.
So the virtues of a superior man are like the wind. The virtues of a common man are like the grass. The grass, when the wind passes over it, it bends. So there is explaining good qualities of a leader based off of others' work, in the context of this book. And then also, so the superior man can, in a way, lead the common man, like in the best possible path, in a way.
So it basically explains, he's kind of talking about all these different qualities, like as a leader, like how punishments, this is kind of when he like gets arrested. And he's like, it's kind of pointless to like be arrested because like a good leader like should influence and demonstrate like a good life full of like honest things. And like, if this individual, the superior man is kind of like the person who exhibits transcendental values. And like the common man are like the people like in the village, for example. And it basically says if an individual does not conform the person who just like lives a simplistic lifestyle to society's expectations, they can raise the bar and set an example of how life should be led. So like the people who, like the transcendental people, if they basically say this is how you should be living, they set a good example. They're like, you can do this. It isn't impossible to live like this. Like it kind of sets the bar, and everyone's like, huh, that's kind of how they're doing it. It kind of makes it like realize that you can do it too. Like for example, standing up against bullying. Like if somebody's, for example, bullying like me, for example, if someone's bullying me and Lindsay's like, and everyone's just kind of watching, like bystanding, like, oh, I don't want to be the one to say anything. If one person says, hey, that's not nice, like you shouldn't do that, then everyone's gonna be like, yeah, that's not nice. You definitely shouldn't do that, and everyone's gonna kind of like come together in a sense and like understand more.
But you wouldn't let people bully you; you would be.
Yeah.
Fair.
This one changed.
Oh. I might have resisted forcibly with more or less effect. Might have run amok against society, but I prefer that society should run amok against me, it being the desperate party. So he's kind of saying that like society thinks that like he's gone crazy. He's like out of his mind. He has no clue what he's doing. And he's like, but I prefer that society should, like, he wants to think society has gone wrong. He doesn't think that he's gone wrong. He thinks that society's gone wrong. It's all, and he doesn't conform to their expectations. He doesn't really think like he's done anything wrong by living in a good, fulfilling lifestyle. He thinks that they should be the ones who consider themselves to be like outsiders. Like he shouldn't consider like himself an outsider.
Yeah, and this also relates to some previous quotes where he thinks that other people should take on his lifestyle and that he should not conform to take on their lifestyle because he believes that his is truly a better lifestyle. And then the next slide. Real quick, the next slide is just a couple figurative languages that we found. So just there's many allusions. We just picked a couple, and so he's made allusions to Iliad and Matthew 5:4-5, and basically the significance of these is just that like he earlier in like other chapters he said that he only likes true works. So it would make sense that he's creating allusions to like Iliad and like Matthew 5:4-5, like all this stuff. It makes more sense than him referring to something that's not as like important. And then there's also an oxymoron in there, but that's basically where he's saying small Herculean, because Hercules was kind of seen as like this big character. But other than that, that's our.
So we've got our like sort of little visual. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like an interactive thing. And it
Yeah,
kind of
it's
ties
like
together both of like the village and the Beanfield. So we have our fan here, which represents like time. So if you have time, let me explain this first.
Okay,
First
so first, this is like Thoreau's core beliefs and like his ideal system. It's kind of like in his heart, like what he believes. And another part about this is that I made it. So it's kind of like I put my hard work into it. These are my beliefs, and so like, so inside, there's all these things like all these themes like individually nonconformity, love of nature, simplicity. All his true beliefs are all in here, and basically this is like what holds him down and what keeps him doing what he's doing, and like what keeps him going on day to day is his life, his lifestyle, and his like true beliefs in his heart. And on the other hand, the villagers, they only care about material goods like money and gossip, So we have all this money on here, and on the back, there's like gossip, like Susie did what? Did you hear? Oh my gosh, Lindsay did this. Did you know that? Like all this gossip. And so basically, over time, the wind will knock down and push over all the money, all the gossip. It's not going to matter in a week, a month, a year. But at the end of the day, Thoreau still has his core beliefs, and he still has his ideas that keep him going on his lifestyle. And so we can
like to like say it sort of like say it in just a different way. The villagers only care about like short-term things. Things will go, that will go away in a little bit, and they can easily be. Cord isn't long enough.
The cord isn't yeah, but it's kind of hard to show. But
it will blow away.
Almost.
They blow away.
They
If
will.
the cord's kind of short, but if you move the table closer, it'll
Yeah.
go. There you
Yeah,
go.
they blow
There.
away.
There you go. They blew away. Just
But all of his hard work and all the stuff he's learned from his hard work, it won't blow away. No matter how much
Yeah.
time passes, he will always hold like all of the things he's learned from his hard work with the beans, like all the stuff he's gained from it.
Good. All right.
That's
Very
it.
good.
Thank you.